Okay, we are now joined by author, radio host, one of the world's most influential conservative thinkers and founder of the extremely popular YouTube channel PragerU, which has over 1.2 billion total video views. Dennis Prager, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be with you, as you can well imagine.
Thank you. You are in Melbourne with the United Israel Appeal, which brings together people to help raise money and awareness for the disadvantaged and underprivileged in Israel. Why is United Israel Appeal as a cause so important to you?
I believe that Israel is the moral litmus test, which a role that the Jews have played historically. It's a lousy role to play, being the canary in the mine. You die, and then you're the canary. You die as soon as there are noxious fumes, and the miners then know, uh-oh, there are noxious fumes. We have to fight them. Then the Jews have played the role of the canary. Israel is the only state on earth targeted for extinction. Unless one believes in tremendous coincidence, it is not a coincidence that the only state targeted for extinction is also the only Jewish state. Jew hatred has simply morphed from the individual to the state. So you don't get many people who hate every Jew like the Nazis did. Instead, you have people who hate the Jewish state. So it's simply gone from micro to macro. And it is an amazing thing. Israel is smaller than El Salvador. And the United Nations has spent more time condemning Israel than any other country on earth. So it's an existential battle for Israel's existence, and I feel a moral obligation to make people aware of that.
Mm-hmm. So your video on the Israeli-Arab conflict was, I believe, the most popular video that PragerU has done. Is that correct?
No, believe it or not, by happenstance, as it happens, if I may be redundant, the most popular video, which hit over 50 million views, is on something that would have no interest to you as non-Americans. And that is about the American Electoral College. We don't vote direct popular vote. We vote by state. If you win the state by 10 votes, you win all the electoral votes of that state. The founders of the United States wanted states to retain power and not just gigantic cities, and that would end all elections in effect. Nobody would campaign in smaller states. Yeah. You just win California and New York, and you basically have done all you need to do.
Yeah. I guess candidates are still not campaigning in smaller states.
Well, Hillary Clinton found out that was a mistake. You know, Michigan and Pennsylvania and so on. I mean, they're not small states by any means, but they're smaller than the big ones, than the biggest. In any event, because right after the Trump election, there was such an outcry on the left against the Electoral College, people wanted to know, where can we go on the internet to find reasons for it? Yeah. Bravo, we were there already, having made two by this woman who works very diligently on the subject, Tara Ross, and it went viral, super viral, hyper viral. And we are convinced that it changed, the polls in the country changed in a few weeks. And given that 50 million people in America at least saw the video, it clearly had an impact. So that's the second, interestingly, is, I believe, the second most popular. My Middle East, I think, is the third one. So you're right about it being very high. And by the way, I only give 10% of the videos just for your viewers' interest. But the second most is, what did slavery cause the American Civil War? And we had a professor of history at the U.S. Military Academy, West Point, give the course, and of course the answer is yes. That's the reason the South seceded, slavery. Interestingly, the left loves us for that video. And I'm not quite sure why. Who really has denied that it was slavery? I don't know if it's a left-right issue, but the left said, well, if there's one thing Prager University got right, it's the Civil War video. Okay, fine.
But as you say, the Middle Eastern conflicts one is very popular. I think it is the most viewed on YouTube, maybe not on other platforms. Why do you think that video has caught so many people's imagination and has become, so the ideas that you said there, which sound basic when you say them, but they're clearly very revolutionary to some people?
Well, I think you answered it in the last sentence. They're revolutionary to many people. The propaganda against Israel that saturates the Western world, indeed the whole world, is you can drown in it. I debated at Oxford. That's another video that was very popular. It's not a PragerU video, it's just my video at Oxford. And believe it or not, the topic I debated at Oxford, at the famous Oxford Union, was who is the greater obstacle to Middle East peace, Israel or Hamas? And as I said at Oxford, I said it would be as if in the late 1930s, there was a debate at Oxford, who was the greater obstacle to European peace, Hitler or Churchill? And who would vote Churchill? And yet this was a debate at Oxford, and indeed the side that said Israel was the bigger, in other words, a democratic state was voted, and I pointed this out, for the first time in history, a democratic free country was voted the reason for war, not the totalitarian terror state. It is almost literally a broken moral compass. So if somebody comes along and just clearly says, wait a minute, black is black, white is white, green is green, and yellow is yellow, and if it's done logically, which is all I work on is logic and reason, it obviously will have a following. And my thesis in that video is one side wants the other side dead. That's the line I keep showing. And that's the case. If Israel disarmed tomorrow, we are burning all our armaments and we will fight no longer, what would happen? The next day there would be a genocide. If you deny that, you are lying to yourself. I mean, that's truly you're irredeemable if you deny that.
And history shows that.
But that's what they want. They want genocide in Israel. The rape and torture and murder would be Holocaustian. But now imagine if the Palestinians said, you know what, and Hezbollah and Hamas, you know what, we're burning all our armaments and we will fight no more. What would happen the next day in that case? Peace. Peace. If that doesn't persuade someone what the casus belli, the cause of war is, nothing will.
All right, well, I'm glad you mentioned Oxford University, because we want to talk about one of your favourite topics, which is free speech, and particularly free speech on university campuses. We've seen a decline of free speech across the Western world. Why do you think that is?
The left has never valued freedom. Liberals have valued freedom. I make a very strong distinction, and I think all of us who are not on the left must, between liberals and leftists. Mm-hmm. Liberals are pro-free speech. Leftists have never been, because they are not for any form of freedom. Leftism is as totalitarian as a country will allow it to be. It isn't always totalitarian because it doesn't have the power. But where it has the power, it suppresses those with whom it differs, period. Or you would say full stop, right?
We would say full stop, yeah.
So I'll say full stop too.
It took me ages to work out what period meant in American.
Yes, no, I could imagine. So I studied in England for a year. I picked up a lot. This is why the university is so repressed. And I tell people who are in the middle, all you need to know about the left is the university. See what they do when other people say things. You guys need to follow Amy Wax, W-A-X. She is a professor of law at the University of Pennsylvania. University of Pennsylvania is considered one of the Ivy League universities, so it's one of the most prestigious in the United States. The woman wrote a piece for the Philadelphia Inquirer. The University of Pennsylvania is in Philadelphia. And she wrote this last summer. She wrote it with a law professor from San Diego, that in fact America did well by having middle-class bourgeois values, and that they're basic, if you wish, liberal values. For example, obviously freedom, but that, for example, people should get married and they should also have a child after they get married. Marriage was valued, having children after marriage was valued, hard work was valued, and these values are good, and we need them again. We need them reinstated, as it were. She was condemned by half of her fellow professors at the University of Pennsylvania faculty, And now, and you can read this, the Wall Street Journal editorial just on this. She also just said that affirmative action does not help blacks. And that's why the black graduation rate is lower than others, because by changing standards, lowering standards for black students, you have made it much harder for them to do well. As it would be true for me or anybody. If you lowered standards to accept me, I wouldn't do so well. And Black Lives Matter, which is a truly fascistic, violent movement, has said, I'm paraphrasing, we warn the University of Pennsylvania, if you do not fire this professor, we will disrupt your campus. We're a week away from the deadline, but this is what the left does. The Black Lives Matter, which is a truly dangerous organization to liberty and indeed to human life, I believe, is a hero of the left. They have been given $100 million by left-wing organizations, by either the Ford Foundation or another one. I mean, it even so-called mainstream. So the university reflects the left's suppression of free speech and of freedom generally. And why do they do it? Because they can't win on the merits of argument.
You mentioned in this speech that you made during last week, I think, or maybe a few weeks ago actually, to the Conservative College Students Action Summit, this distinction between leftism and liberals. And I thought that was a really interesting point. Do you mind going through that again for our listeners?
Well, freedom of speech is one perfect example of a left-liberal difference. The most dramatic is race. Many American campuses have a black dormitory, all black dorm. You have to be black to live in that dormitory. This is the antithesis of liberalism, which believed in racial integration, which believed that race, the ideal is to be colorblind. The left is the antithesis of colorblind. The left is the most race-honoring ideology since the Nazis. Now, I'm not comparing them to the Nazis. They're not building concentration camps or gas chambers. I know that. But in terms of race, the last big ideology to honor race were the Nazis, and now the left. They honor race. There is a list. People can follow my tweets, and they can get this list. I actually put it out in a tweet last week. University of California has put out a list of what are called microaggressions. Statements people make that they may not think are racist, but really are. Here is an example. If someone says, I only believe in one race, the human race, that is a microaggression. On the left, to say there's only one race, the human race, what is a beautiful concept. It's a beautiful liberal concept and conservative one that is now considered racist. That's a classic liberal left difference. It's embodied in a man who I'm sure is known to some Australians, Alan Dershowitz, professor of law at Harvard University, lifelong Democrat, lifelong Hillary Clinton supporter, well, not lifelong, but as long as she's been in politics, and liberal. And he said, and it will be in the film that Adam Carolla and I are putting out, called No Safe Spaces. He said, so you will see it, but I play it on my radio show, which, by the way, anyone in Australia can hear if they just listen to the app. You don't want to hear it live. It's 3 a.m.
You got up for that this morning, didn't you?
I did indeed, yes.
That's commitment.
It was commitment, and I kept saying it to my audience. God, am I committed to you? And he said, I'm a lifelong liberal Democrat. My enemy is the left, not the conservative, not the right. Liberals do not understand that the enemy of liberalism is not conservatism. The enemy of liberalism is leftism.
I think that's actually an emerging trend. There are more kind of lifelong left-wing academics and commentators who are coming out against what we call identity politics and leftism.
Good, I hope you're right. Identity politics is racism. Yeah. So it's a cute word for racism.
So going back to your point that it's now considered a microaggression to say you only believe in one race, the human race. You pointed out in a recent debate at UC Berkeley that had that been the predominant view of people in the 1600s, 1700s, there probably wouldn't have been a slave trade, which I think is such an interesting thing.
That's right.
That it's now considered racist. What would have destroyed the most racist thing we've done.
That's correct. If everybody believed there's only one race, you could not have justified black slavery.
Not at all. So also in that debate, so just
Thank you, by the way, for reminding me. It was a good point.
blew me away when
I forget a lot of my good points, so thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
I was watching the video going, I need to use that. I'm going to steal that.
No, Steve, no, enjoy it.
All right, cool. Just for our viewers and listeners that haven't seen it yet, so about 4 days ago, at least they released a video of a debate you had with two students at UC Berkeley. And you raised the topic that conservative students are now too scared to speak in universities. And they, to me, ludicrously brought up that if there was that for conservatives, it was just as bad for people on the left. And to be, I was kind of getting the feel from them that no conservative student had ever actually come up to them in private and said, I really felt out of it in that class, or I didn't feel like I could contribute. So what do you say that conservative students are now so silenced that even their friends aren't even aware that they're being silenced? It's the marginalization.
I wrote a column. I wrote a weekly syndicated column in the U.S., which is obviously on the internet, so anyone can read it. But I wrote about this. I taught Jewish history at Brooklyn College. That was my first full-time job, so to speak. So I wrote a book on anti-Semitism. So I know a lot about that subject. And there is a name that most Jews are aware of, but most non-Jews are not. It's called Marrano. Marrano is a Spanish name for Jews during the Spanish Inquisition, which was in the 1500s, 1600s, 1300s. It went back 300 years. But it was at its height at the end of the 15th century. And Jews would hide their being Jewish at home, not tell anyone, and they would act Catholic publicly. What we have in America today, and I wouldn't be surprised if you have it here as well, is Marranos who are conservative. On the outside, they are just like everyone else, and privately they're conservative, or even, God forbid, a Trump supporter. Let me give you a really dramatic example. Last year, I conduct orchestras as an avocation. I love music, and I'm obviously immersed in it. So I conducted the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. It was a great honor for me, and it was a great night. And there were charges made against me of being a racist and fascist. How could an orchestra play for a racist and fascist? Because any conservative is immediate. So you're not even allowed to conduct an orchestra if you're a conservative. So listen to this. The New York Times covered this quote-unquote controversy of a conservative conducting the orchestra of a very left-wing city at a major concert hall. And it was a hatchet job piece, which is not at all. And I wrote about how they report things in another article. Okay, back to this. So I got email after email from members of orchestras all across America. I mean, I know orchestras, the biggest orchestras, the most famous, most prestigious. Dear Mr. Prager, I just want you to know I am a Marrano in my own orchestra. Really? A violist from one of the most prestigious orchestras in the country, obviously I won't mention her name, who's been a violist for 40 years, said none of the members of the orchestra know that I'm conservative.
That's pretty telling.
Yeah.
We get contacted by academics in Australia, like the Institute of Public Affairs, saying that they're a conservative and that they're so glad that there's one organisation that makes those comments, but so none of their colleagues know either that they're conservative.
That's right. That's exactly. So you have it here.
Yeah.
I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, let's talk about something slightly more optimistic. We've seen, Prager University is obviously wildly popular, 1.2 billion views, and 60% of those people are under the age of 35, I believe. Do you see, so there's Prager on the one hand, and then we've got people like Jordan Peterson who are also very wildly popular with young people. Do you see young people actually sort of wanting to be challenged and wanting to hear the kind of ideas?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
And I am not just let me explain, because I also do a lot of work on happiness.
Okay.
I've written a book on it, and I do an hour of my show a week since 1999 on happiness. It's a very important subject to me because I think it's a moral attribute, not just an emotional state. And So there are two definitions for optimist. If you look in the dictionary, it's very interesting. Definition number one is one who believes everything will turn out well. I am not definition one.
Okay.
But definition two I am, and that is one who sees the positive in any given situation. So I am about to tell you that I am optimistic guardedly on number one, vis-a-vis the next generation, in the sense that if we can get to them, they're open to hearing. Not all. Many have been truly already. They're indoctrinated in America beginning elementary school. I don't know what the term you use for school is.
Yeah, primary school. But people,
primary school, yes. And then what do you say for high school?
High school.
High school as well. So as I've now begun to say on my radio show, high schools are actually worse than universities right now. Because at least at a university, every so often a speaker will show up who is conservative. There may be riots, but he or she shows up. But I'm very rarely invited to high schools. I'm regularly invited to universities. High schools don't want. I spoke on happiness at a prestigious high school in where I live in Southern California, and it took years to get permission. And I spoke on happiness, and that was controversial. Yeah. So but if we can get to them, they will say that makes sense. Yeah. That's all I ask. I am conservative because it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to raise the minimum wage and have more people go out of business, so they hire fewer, and then the government supports more people. That's the reason. That's the only reason I'm against increasing the minimum wage. Oh, by the way, I got to tell you, I am tweeting out a picture from one of your trams. I took it yesterday. I took this picture. Tell me if you're familiar with it. It's some guy, an angry guy, in the picture, and it's about the horrible notion that medical care should be for profit.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen the ad, but
so I'm tweeting it out to the United States. So that's a classic example. So in other words, it's a bad idea for people to make money helping people medically. Mm-hmm. You know how stupid that is? It's just stupid. It's immoral and stupid. So let me ask them a question. If it's immoral to make money on people's health care, why is it moral to make money on people's food?
That's right.
You need food more than health care. Mm-hmm. Or housing. And the truth is, they don't believe you should make money on those things. They find it all of that noxious. They don't think, they feel. To understand the left, all one must understand is they do not think, they feel. I feel for the poor, I feel for the indigenous people, I feel for blacks, I feel for you name it. I feel for the Palestinians. What is right is not a left-wing question. Whom do you feel for is the question.
So with this sort of, with young people at the moment, a theme that comes up on this podcast a lot is that it's now sort of, revolutionary, or sort of like the teenage rebellion is to actually be conservative or classical liberal when it was the left for so long, because the previous
I'm not that optimistic. that's I hope you're right, but they don't understand. They have been, I believe the left is involved in child abuse. First of all, telling boys and girls you're not a boy or you're not a girl until you affirm it later in life. I'm sure it's true here, but I know it's true in the United States. Teachers are told not to tell first graders, 6-year-olds, not to call them boys and girls. You can't impose a gender identity. In the New York subway system, our tube, in New York, you say subway or tube for the train?
Just the train. Yeah. We don't really have...
Train? Well, neither. The underground train in New York, the New York subway system, has abolished, so has the tube in England, in London. They no longer make announcements, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm. Our national airline carriers made the same announcement last week. They were going to stop referring to passengers as ladies and gentlemen.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
right.
What,
Qantas?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Qantas? Virgin Australia?
Yeah, Qantas, but yeah.
Qantas.
Yeah, I don't know if Virgin's done it.
Yeah, I expected it from Qantas, yes. That's astonishing. So what are they going to ask then on passport? With what gender do you identify? Male, female, none, non-binary, cisgender? What will Qantas do now?
I wasn't in that meeting, so I don't know what they sort of decided on, but we'll let you know.
By the way, it's not only, I believe, abusive of children. It's a beautiful thing to be a boy or a girl. That there is a tiny, infinitesimally small percentage of humanity that has gender dysphoria is a tragedy, but you don't abolish the notion of gender because of that. But there's an absurdity at the root of this, because even the transgender identify as a gender. A transgender identifies as a boy or a girl. Almost nobody identifies as neither. And because of them, I'm not going to change the world. So even for the transgendered, it doesn't make sense to abolish ladies and gentlemen. The transgender does think of him or herself as a lady or gentleman.
And in fact, in many cases, they'd be relieved that someone referred
yes,
to them as a man
exactly.
Yeah.
So, be that as it may, though, does the digital revolution, do you think, provide opportunities to reach young people in
Completely.
a way?
This is a gift from heaven. However, I am deeply worried that Google, which owns YouTube, we are in a lawsuit against them because they have put 40 of our 300 videos on the restricted list, which means libraries cannot show them, schools cannot show them, and any parent that blocks pornography can't show them. You see that? Blocks pornography. And we have a history of the Korean War. What's pornographic about that? One of the most mild-mannered historians in America, Victor Davis Hanson, gives the course.
He's a handsome man. Victor Davis Hanson.
Victor Davis, yes, he is.
Yeah, so, and you were just saying before that it's even customs officials in Australia that are being able to reach videos in ways that would never have happened 20 years ago.
That's the gift. That's why I mentioned to you I'm speaking in Romania. I think before that we got on the air. Yeah. Oh, I've gotten invitations, and it's all from young people. Do you know what I get the most from young people? And that's just what I get. The PragerU gets 50 times more than I personally get. But the thing that I most often get is, this is the first time I have heard a way of looking at reality that is not left-wing. They didn't know it existed. That's a guy, a young man from Venezuela, called my radio show. He listens in Venezuela. And he said, I just want you to know, I didn't know there's an alternative to the left, because in Venezuela, if you run against the left, you're just another leftist. And he opened my eyes to that fact. Venezuela has been truly destroyed by the left. It was a wealthy country, relatively speaking, in Latin America. And first Chavez and now Maduro has ruined the country. There's opposition to Maduro, but it's another left-winger. So in other words, the reason for the cancer is never identified. It's as if, oh, Maduro and Chavez, they're awful, but leftism is beautiful. That's the thinking. That the Pope is a left-wing thinker with Catholic theology. He is indistinguishable from any leftist, indistinguishable, but he also happens to believe in the virgin birth and in the Catholic catechism, obviously, and other things that are specifically religious. But his values are 100% Latin American left.
So let's talk about PragerU. So obviously we've been referring to it a lot, and hopefully our listeners and viewers are already fans, and if not, go out and search for it. And it's been wildly popular. Did you expect, what do you think explains this popularity, and did you sort of expect it when you started to launch it?
I have a chapter in my book on happiness called Happiness is a Serious Problem. That's the book. And I have a chapter on expectations. And I said, if you have high expectations, you'll never be grateful. So drop all your expectations, and then you'll be grateful, because you can't be happy if you're not grateful. Gratitude is the mother of happiness. So I have no expectations in life. Every day I wake up healthy, I go, wow. I really mean it. I learned this in my third year at university. I studied in England, and I studied, among other things, comparative religion. And my professor was a Buddhist, an Englishman who became a Buddhist. Trevor Ling, he wrote a major work on religion, and he said the Buddhist view is all pain in life comes from desires and expectations not fulfilled. So therefore the Buddhist aim is to drop all desires and all expectations. I don't believe in dropping desires. I think it's a healthy thing. But expectations, he changed my life in a day. I've never had expectations. If someone would have said to me, Prager University will have 600 million views in a year, I would have laughed. I would have said, that's absurd. I will thank God if we have 6 million. I didn't even think 60 million, only because I just don't have expectations. Now that it has happened, it does make sense. It's very rational, none yelling, very professionally done, tremendous amount of work in every video. There are editors after editors. I am involved in the writing of every single video. And we have terrific people giving them, terrific video. The illustrators are geniuses, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I give them half the credit. And Alan Estrin, the man whose idea it was, he realized 5 minutes is the perfect length. And for those who think you can't get important things across in 5 minutes, they're entirely wrong. It is an incredibly long period of time for wisdom. You can't get how red blood cells operate in 5 minutes. But we don't give courses on the human body and biology. We give courses on wisdom, of which there is none at the university.
So I've got a couple of questions about PragerU. Firstly, what is next for PragerU? And secondly, in reading about PragerU, there's a lot of pieces and a lot of noted that there wasn't much material about US President Donald Trump at the moment. Is that deliberate, or is that just something that's coming out?
It is deliberate. We're not overtly political. We want to influence your way of thinking, and then you will translate that into the directly political. But I mean, we do have what's the difference between left and right. I give those, in fact. It's a series of courses, differences between left and right. And you can differ with me all you like, obviously, and people do. I get this very often. I'm stopped regularly by people who recognize me and say something sweet. And they say, and men say this too, Dennis, I really love you. And it's very sweet when they say that. I'm very touched. But you hear that all the time. And I said, actually, I don't hear that all the time. Just Google Dennis Prager and a-hole, and you will get at least 50,000 hits. So there are a lot of people who can't stand what I'm doing and saying. However, to their credit, Mother Jones, one of the leading left-wing, that's not even liberal, left-wing magazines in the United States, just did a very long piece on me and PragerU. They obviously differed with stuff, but it wasn't a hit piece, to their credit. And they noted, we're changing millennials' minds. They said, if you're not aware of what PragerU was doing, you're really out of it. They are changing minds. And we want to change minds. And that's important, otherwise we lose.
I think, wasn't it, you did a poll and 59% of people who'd watched a PragerU video changed their mind on an issue, is that correct?
I don't remember the specific, but okay. Yes, there was that poll done.
Yep.
There was a few things asked. Did it affect the way you voted? So I don't want to misquote the number, but it was substantial.
And of course, 60% of your viewers are below 35.
And that's not our statistic. That's from Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, extraordinary.
So you brought up just before that people sort of said you can't get these important issues across in 5 minutes, whereas I think like the sort of predominating view of online videos is the shorter the better, as if you were supposed to get it down to 2 or 3 minutes.
I think 5 is critical. I mean, there's no law in physics that says this, but I think under 5, it's possible, but we have found 5 is 750 words. That's 750 words is the length of a serious column. I don't think any columnist would argue that I can't influence a reader in my column. Why the hell are they writing columns then? Obviously they think that. People think you could change minds in a tweet. I have not bought that particular. I tweet in order to offer evidence of a certain point, but I like to develop an idea.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, so maybe we could use that time to speak about Western civilization. If you could, what does the phrase Western civilization mean to you, and why is it so important?
Which phrase?
Western civilization.
This is so painful a topic. What civilization abolished slavery? Let's begin with that. Slavery was universal. universal. By the way, human sacrifice was universal. The Hebrew Bible abolished human sacrifice. It was the first religious text, cultural text, to abolish it completely. It did not happen elsewhere. Then slavery. Everyone had slavery. So the question is not why did America or Britain have slavery? The question is who abolished it? It's like the question about poverty. Poverty was ubiquitous. It was universal. So the only question is not why did America or Australia or anybody else have poverty? The question is why is there affluence? You have to explain affluence, not poverty. You have to explain the abolition of slavery, not slavery. Western civilization alone abolished slavery on any large level. Western slavery alone gave women human rights. You can go down the list of, gave democracy. So I want to protect this. It values the human life is infinitely precious in Western civilization. Of course, Western civilization had anti-Western things. Communism and Nazism hated Western civilization.
Yeah.
But that Westerners went along with it is a disgrace on their name. There's no question about that. But they're not Western civilizational ideas. They were anti-West. The President of the United States was in Warsaw last year, gave a speech, said we have to protect Western civilization, and the New York Times and all of the American and I'm sure Australian and I'm sure British media and I'm sure German and French all said this really was what they call now in America a dog whistle, a hidden sign for white supremacy. So now the left equates Western civilization with white, which is exactly what the white supremacists say. That's the irony. The left and the white supremacists are in agreement on almost all things. The white supremacists want separate dorms for blacks. The white supremacists equate the West with white.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just curious, were the Nazis not white? How do you equate white and West? The Nazis were white, the communists were white.
The Russians for communism?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are safeguarding, and not just Western civilization, its basis, which is Judeo-Christian. Here, by the way, I do unfortunately differ from a lot of fellow conservatives who think that they think religion is as unnecessary to liberty and morality as the left does. So I'm fighting that battle as well. And I give a number of courses on God and morality at Prager University. And my book is just about to come out, the first volume of my commentary on the first five books of the Bible, called The Rational Bible, where I want to change secular conservatives' ideas about the irrelevance of the Bible.
Absolutely. Dennis, thank you so much for your time. That was such a great chat.
It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, and so thanks again to United Israel Appeal for granting us the time for the interview. And yeah, thank you so much.